Hi, I'm Jon Tsourakis with the Digital Mastermind. You're listening to The Climb. This is where agency owners and leaders tune in to get growth tips and strategies for growing their businesses. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this week on this episode of The Climb. I'm here with my partner in climb, David McGraw, as always. And this week is episode 12, and we're going to be talking about the current landscape, potentially how to deal with a crisis, and what strategies you can put in place when a crisis arises, hence the one that we're in right now, Corona. So, Dave, I think let's just open up the floor to some of the things that we're doing right now.
First, I just want to just give you credit for planning this episode 3 months out when there was no coronavirus. I mean, you're scheduling.
Sounds like you're implicating me in some of the conspiracy theories that are going around.
Yeah, your scheduling skills are top notch. So,
yeah, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Our guest today, I hope he's going to feel welcomed to answer some of my questions, based on kind of a shift. Granted, I wanted him on the podcast before, but this is
perfect timing. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, he's a researcher in strategy, so I want to see how that works into a crisis management and based on what he knows about agencies. So interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, some of the things that we're doing that's interesting is, and again, it's things that we started prior to the crisis that now that I'm looking through it through the crisis lens is actually giving me more calm, and I can see how the value of it is. And one of those, for example, is, one of our guests told us about how they like to write down all their processes and review them continually. Well, we started doing that. And now that we've got all of our processes down, I mean, I think I have 32 pages written of process and procedure.
A thrilling read.
It's thrilling. It's so bad. It's so dry. But then that gives me calmness that we have the plan. Like, I know what Oyova looks like, no matter in this crisis or after the crisis or rebuild or whatever it is, we have the plan.
I love that. Yeah, I was on a call. You were on it too, and we were talking with Cameron Medill yesterday, and he brought up the Stockdale paradox. I'd never heard of this.
I didn't either.
Yeah, and apparently it was during it was one of the wars. I think it was Vietnam War, and it was all the POWs that were. And this is just me based on memory. I didn't even look this up, which probably I should have. Where it was the pessimists and the optimists were the ones that died. It was the ones that had a plan that survived. So that is essentially, you're speaking to that, having a plan, being more calm about it. And, not to make any illusions, but when it comes to recessions, budget cuts, things like that, marketing is looked at as a luxury from a lot of business perspectives, right? They don't see it as the necessity that it is.
Right.
Which, at some point, almost everything other than the production or the product itself, to some extent, can be cut, right? If a business is truly going to slim down. And I think that's what the temperament and concern a lot of agencies are having right now. And that's what I'm hoping that we can go through and talk through some things with our guests today based on where agencies were and based on research. And maybe we can all figure out together where they should go based on that knowledge base.
Yeah. It's, many of our guests and listeners don't know, but we kind of both created our companies before the merger, during the 2008 financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And we both learned a lot of lessons then. I mean, I think I was younger. I had less to lose. So I had less risk. I was a little bit more ballsy and just getting out there and trying to do whatever I could to hustle. Mm-hmm. I knew one day, like, going through those processes of going after customers that are cutting staff and going through a reduction, I knew back then that one day I hoped to grow big enough to where, I would be in their shoes. It's like, here we are 10 years later, mm-hmm. Another crisis. I mean, you pretty much have to prepare. Every decade we're going to have something.
Yeah.
Since I've been alive, it's been once a decade, there's been some major crisis.
I agree. Yeah, there's something dramatic each recession. So, and we don't even know if we're in a recession yet. Granted, we very well could be, definitely in a bear market. But let's say that we have this incident, right? We had the financial crisis from the housing market. We had 9/11. Just before that, we had the .com bust. Then we had Desert Storm. Then I think it was savings and loans or something like that.
Yeah, S&L.
87. Yeah. And then I can't remember. There's another one like in the mid 80s or a little bit earlier than that. And then there was the thing with like Jimmy Carter before that. Yeah. So this is obviously, this is obviously, going to continue to happen. I think it's important for agencies to prepare. And it's funny you mentioned that too. So in 2009, we would undercut anybody, right? Because, hey, I needed the business. We just started. I was doing things I never thought I would even imagine. Like, oh yeah, hey, we're, a marketing agency, web design and development. We would do like logos and branding and things like that. And we would also do essentially anything. So I remember crawling under people's desks to like do like networking problems, and we would do anything. But there was a time where we took business from this other larger firm, and I remember the guy calling me and in so many words saying, like what goes around comes around.
Right.
I was just like, all right, hey, cool. Well, I got the client, I got the business. And that turned into a big, account, long-term business. So I might very well be having that call with somebody here very soon where it's just like, okay, it's a changing in the guards. Or if you're willing to adapt and go the distance, which I don't think he was willing to do. I think he had too much pride. I don't have any. I want to win. So whatever it takes to win and survive the storm, I think those are going to be the people at the end that are standing, on the rock, staring at the rainbow after all the rain.
Yeah. I think just when you look at it through the perspective of we live through continual crises decade after decade, that there is sunshine at the end then. I mean, I'm 40, you're what, 37?
37. Yep.
We've seen my whole life I've seen this cycle, and but your instinct is to just go into your shell and just get real defensive. And what you have to realize is that this happens all the time. And we have to be able to learn from those previous mistakes. I mean, it's human nature, even though it's coming, when you're actually in it, is to just come from a stance of scarcity and just fear and hoarding. And it's the wrong approach. It's the reason why everyone says when people stop marketing, their sales crater right after that, and it just kind of issue on issue.
It's domino effect.
Yeah. So I mean, Warren Buffett famously said that when there's blood on the streets is the time to invest. And I kind of think we got to take that approach with our businesses. Here is the time to go out and increase market share.
Yeah, and along those lines, I look at it just like social anxiety, right? Somebody walks into a room and everybody normally, for the most part, just thinks like, what's everybody thinking about me? Or they're going to do all those things. But if you get out there, and realize that you don't have to think those thoughts, everybody else is thinking about themselves, you can make some serious, headways insofar as meeting people and making connections. In this case, if everybody's going to go into their shell, you should take the opposite approach. And literally, it's going to get less competitive by default on account of just the nature and energy that's out there in the market.
100%.
But, yeah. And was that Warren Buffett that said that? I think like some Roman emperor probably would have said that earlier.
He might have been quoting a Roman Empire, but when it comes to like investing in the stock market, that's his famous. He also said something, when everyone's fearful, be greedy. When everyone's greedy, be fearful.
Exactly what we're talking about here. Like literally just, okay, whatever it's doing, shift the other direction.
It means going against the grain.
Absolutely.
So, 2 years ago, I had a wave of good friends buying homes. And everyone was buying homes. Mm-hmm. And that was telling me that it's a terrible time to buy a home then. If everyone's buying a home, and we have seen peak prices in the real estate market for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So just like in business, we got to go against the grain if we want to stand out. And if everyone's acting fearful, we got to go out there and be greedy. And that's the reason why maybe over the last 2 years, we weren't really out there. We were biding our time preparing for this because we kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah. And if you're going to, I don't necessarily like the word greedy. I think it should be, you know, something more like enthusiastic, maybe, right?
Yeah, sure.
Language is important, super important to me.
It is.
But so let's say being more enthusiastic, I think it's also agencies coming together with like the digital mastermind group, all of these others, and collaborating in motivating each other to go that extra mile. For those that are in their silos, that are, you know, that think everything out there is, you know, competition, and they have that scarcity mindset, I believe those are going to be some of the first that fail because of just all the fear that foments with that type of personality.
Well, I love the DMG group for what it brings. You know, the internet, and you know, right now everyone's self-quarantining, sitting in their home. That is an echo chamber of fear. The media is scaring the shit out of everyone.
Yeah.
And the DMG group is our optimistic beacon in the storm that's saying, we're all in this together. How do we help each other? How, you know, what are the challenges? I mean, the whole time that we were on our, monthly call where we all came together to discuss, you know, the coronavirus and how it impacts us, you know, it was a real good sense of community. I mean, people were really, you know, appreciative and understanding, and we were collaborating on ideas and talking about, you know, SBA processes and all that. It was really valuable. And for anyone listening to this, if you're an agency and you don't have that support group, I mean, contact Jon. You need to be in DMG.
Well, I love that plug. I love it. No, and you're absolutely right. People were sharing authentically, and just it was real collaboration, saying like, "Hey, have you tried this? How about this?" And some people had some stories on there that, and not my place to share, but they were just deeply concerned based on certain things that they've seen. And I can be pinged as a how would you put this, as an optimist, but I believe it's all right if you're an optimist and based on the Stockdale paradox thing, and you got a plan, the probability of you losing is slim to none. And I think it's just making sure that you have the energy and the ability to recharge, keeping the motivation necessary to accomplish your objectives.
So 2 things that I want to say for that analogy. I think you missed the part that he said both optimists and pessimists both die.
I know. So I said, yeah, if you're an optimist with a plan, you can't lose. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I want to say the pessimist probably died. I don't know. I haven't read this. They probably died a lot sooner than the optimist.
Right. So second, can you give us some bullet points of just what are some of the things we talked about on that call? You know, not specific to any company, but just the brief generalities of some of those.
I think they were get money now, right? That was one of the things, you know, get money while money's cheap. So if you're going to get it, also some of the loans that states are offering by deeming their areas disaster areas, lack of a better term. Some of the others would be trying to think whether you're going to lay off people or furlough them. There's a difference. Furlough is where you can an employee can keep their benefits, right? In some states, they can also still get unemployment, and you can bring those people back. I think those were some of the highlights. Also, strategies of what to do to get business, right? You don't necessarily need to change your position because there's probably going to be a lot of, you know, agencies that are, you know, specific in a certain lane. But there's things, even on our last podcast that we talked about, that are just outside of that core circle of business that you focus on, where you might be able to pull in more business by just maybe widening your scope a little bit. As well as potentially going after some recession-proof areas. Yeah, a lot of people are also going to make that determination, but I'm a firm believer in if you go the distance, it's a marathon. You can wear them out. You can do things that you know, the others that are going for that business are not willing to do, or be smart and figure out how to partner with them so it's, you know, it's a win-win-win between you, the other competitor, and your client.
I just read on social media, somebody, it was either David C. Baker or somebody else. They said if you are one of the agencies that's going to pivot to a recession-proof market, well, they're recession-proof. They don't need you because they're recession-proof, and there's probably already someone there. you're not going to win. You're going to fail faster. That was their message, and I agree with it 100%.
I agree with it, but I don't think it hurts to go in that direction, because just because somebody is specialized in a specific area doesn't mean they're going to think like you. And if you are hungry, you can't teach hungry, right?
Sure.
And I think it instills a type of creativity through constraint and force where you can get in there and you might be, I mean, I'm not trying to create pricing wars, undercut the guy and gal that have been doing that for 20 years in that space.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I think if you were let's say you were in some kind of line of business like automotive marketing.
Yep.
And people aren't luxury, let's say luxury automotive marketing. And right off the bat, you think we're in a recession or we're heading towards a recession. Luxury cars aren't going to sell. Let's pivot to scooters. Well, I don't think you're going to win there as much as if you just, instead of, my gut tells me, go win the top 10% luxury that is still going to sell. Like there's still going to be football players that want to buy a Lamborghini. Go work with the people that are selling Lamborghinis, you know, instead of just a luxury Honda. So it's a time to upgrade and go after the best in your market. If you're hungry.
You can, that's possible. Yeah. I wouldn't say that. I think that's something you should explore too. Right. But I think based on when things get bad, that market is gone. You sell cars, right? So, and I don't know if it's going to go that. I'm not trying to create panic, but you know how to sell cars. So you can go set commercial trucks. You can go industrial. You have that story to tell. And all it is literally that story to people based on your knowledge base, which is going to instill that trust that they're going to buy from you. That's what I'm speaking to. As far as a position where you're, selling cars and then you're going to, pivot over to, let's say selling like office equipment. I think that is ridiculous. And I'm hoping, and I would say he's a really smart guy. I've met him. I think that's probably what he's speaking to. And we're going to have him on the podcast. And I would say that he would agree with, what I'm saying. And if not, I mean, hell, it's going to make a great one.
Right. Excellent.
All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get our guest on here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to be here.
And it's Nicholas Petroski, right?
There you go. Nice and Slavic.
All right. So before we get into everything, let's give listeners an overview of your climb. This is essentially the story of, who you are and how you got there. Stop me if any of this is inaccurate. You're a proud Ohioan from Canton, graduate of Kent University with a specialization in finance. You interned as a lab technician, went into, then became a financial analyst for 5 years, then a research analyst for a few years there. And then more specifically, it was a research analyst for 2 years. Then you started a co-working space, an incubator like Tech Lab. And now you've been essentially in a research position as the CEO of Promethean Research for 4 years, where you guys work with companies providing proprietary research to make strategy decisions. And you have a specialty in working with agencies, correct?
Yeah. That's when you put it all together. I kind of forgot I did some of that. So it sounds like a jack of all trades, kind of like, oh, he's a lab technician in a liquid crystal display factory. Like, it sounds all over the place.
No, I guess, yeah. But what I gleaned from this, maybe it wasn't communicated properly, is you've been doing research for more than 10 years.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. And you have a lab background, obviously, if you actually started. I think it's interesting where people begin their careers interning. So I think that's a heavy science, piece to it.
Yeah, for sure. I've always kind of been in that sciencey kind of space. My first major was like physics and chemistry dual major with a math minor. I don't know what I was thinking when I started with that, but like I get
You're
like
thinking of the chicks and the women
this.
that that would be waiting, right?
Right. I get 3 years in, I'm like, this isn't for me. I got to go to something else. So I end up in finance.
Perfect. All right. So everyone has tools to support them in their climb. And I just want to know what's in your backpack. That gives me an idea of a profile of you. So are you iPhone or Android?
Ooh, Android.
PC or Mac?
PC.
All right. Dave's falling in love over there. Yeah. Office 365, Gmail, or something else?
Ooh, for email, Gmail for sure.
Okay. Note taking, Evernote, Google Docs, OneNote, something else?
Pen and paper.
Okay. Wow. All right. Most used app on your phone?
Oh, that's gonna be embarrassing. It's this stupid chicken game.
That's awesome, dude. I love that. What chicken game is it? I want to put it in the notes.
Actually, hold on. I mean, it's good. It's called like I don't know, Egg Inc. So
Egg Inc. Got it.
You just
All
make more chickens, and that's the point of it.
Oh, wow. It's funny. I don't eat chicken anymore because of that. All right. Okay. So, like I mentioned, for the last 10 years, you've been an analyst. You're working with agencies. Today, I want to talk about the crisis that's going on, which is coronavirus, and whether that's an inherent thing of like actually what's going on to somebody or just what the media landscape is. So what I want to know is what is your opinion on what's going on right now as it concerns, agencies, and if you want to dip into companies?
Yeah. So it's a big kind of challenge, and I think the best way to think about that is to put some kind of framework around it. Mm-hmm. To really understand what this is going to impact and how it's going to impact, we kind of need to know what's going on. And mm-hmm. we're in that stage now where we kind of don't have a great handle, economically at least, of how serious this impact is going to be or how prolonged it's going to be. So we'll step back and we'll start with the virus. Mm-hmm. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not an infectious disease expert. Just want to start off with that. This is what we've read from experts and consulted with experts that have done this for a living and that are much better suited for us. We just take this information and look at it in the context of what does it do for agencies. And so we know there's a virus out there. Mm-hmm. We are pretty sure that it's going to impact 40 to 70% of the US population. That's the infected range. Mm-hmm. Mortality rates, it's significantly more fatal than the flu. Mm-hmm. How much more fatal? We don't know. Mm-hmm. It's in that 0.25 to 3% range. It's a huge range. We know that the testing and understanding where this virus is criminally poor in the US. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know how deadly it is. We know it's deadly. We don't know how deadly. We know it's super infectious, and we don't know where it is. So this is all kind of coming together to cause a lot of uncertainty and panic in the marketplaces. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything that markets don't like, it's uncertainty. Mm-hmm. That is terrifying for them. We know that a vaccine is 12 to 18 months out at the earliest. And some therapeutics are coming online now that can maybe lessen the damage from this. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge. That's the freight train that is coming at our faces. Now we look at this in kind of from an economic standpoint in three different phases. So phase one is this kind of comprehension and then protection phase. Not everybody kind of came online or is coming online to understanding the severity of this at the same time or in the same way. There's a lot of misinformation out there about it. There's a lot of, some people are less concerned because they're outside of a demographic that is probably more prone to it. So they think, I don't have to worry about this. And there's others who are maybe overreacting on the other side, saying we need to bunker down and never leave the house again for another 12 months. Like yeah, there's two drastic things, and the truth is obviously somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. To where it is exactly, we don't know. But we're in that space now of kind of understanding and comprehending just how bad this is going to be and how bad it could get. And companies are in that space of, okay, I need to kind of turtle in and I need to protect the assets that I have and make sure I'm a going concern going forward. Mm-hmm.
With the turtling in though, we were talking about that on the top of the show, that I think that's a terrible strategy. That's literally just trying to like wait it out. And granted, I look at this as a storm. I think financially, yeah, you're probably going to have to make some cuts in some specific areas, but I think now you need to market and do whatever it is you can to adapt to this situation. And maybe I'm not fully understanding what the turtling in is that you're saying.
So let me explain that a little more, because I think so in those three phases, we have that comprehension and protection phase that we're kind of in now.
Yep.
The next phase is once this settles, once we know with more certainty how bad it's going to be, and kind of what the response of the U.S. government's going to be, what kind of stimulus comes out, what industries are really going to be affected and how bad, then there's that kind of the weather the storm or adapt to the storm phase. Mm-hmm. And so you have these options that companies can take where they say, okay, we've protected ourselves. Now do we stay in this protected stage, mm-hmm. or do we adapt our business to this kind of temporary new normal? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're referring to, where, mm-hmm. That turtle thing, if you do that forever, you're right. I think that's a bad strategy. Mm-hmm. Especially
at what point is it that's when I always look at, like, action to me is it's a very important thing, and granted, the perfect time to make a decision is always, the best outcome, and you never know when that is. So I think it's a safer bet to begin taking actions now. And I don't know to what degree, because I look at this, and then, I mean, you're definitely more expert on me than this is going to be like a big dip. Things will forever change, right, in this crisis. But, with this big dip, I think you can maximize and take more market share in other areas where you could then, maybe lean back into that other market and then just, continually doing what you were doing after that dip. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. And we advise our clients right now to get into a space where you can take advantage of stuff later on. So mm-hmm. that protection space is really about jumping your cash flow reserves significantly, mm-hmm. cutting unneeded expenses, cutting, low performing business, making your operations as lean as possible, so that when an opportunity comes along, say in 6 months or 3 months, because this other competitor has been having some challenges and now they're looking for an exit, and you can be an acquirer. There's a lot of opportunities like that will come up. If you don't have the cash to take advantage of them, mm-hmm. they're not opportunities for you.
Based on what you know of agencies, how many, if you could just give like a rough estimate, how cash poor are agencies, and what percentage of them do you think are not going to weather this storm?
Oh God, that's hard to predict. That's a hard question. So we've done a decent amount of research in this space, and we do surveys pretty regularly. And one of the questions we ask is, how many months of operating expenses do you have in cash on hand? Mm-hmm. And that question usually comes back in the 1 to 3 month kind of range. Mm-hmm. And that's fine for a really robust growing market. Once we're in the space we're in now, if you want to survive this thing, unless you're in a really insulated end market, you're going to need 6 to 12. And that's a big jump. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're quadrupling cash reserves for a 10-person agency, 15-person agency, that might be $500,000 in cash. Mm-hmm. That's something that is really only available via credit lines, loans, that kind of thing.
Do you see the stimulus, not necessarily where everybody getting like $1,000 check and a car wash, but some of the SBA programs and some of these other things online? Do you think that will be able to sustain a large portion of the agency world?
It maybe different states have different kind of backing. I know federally the SBA had, last time I checked, it had a loan option for, I think, 3.5%. Mm-hmm. And that was payable up to, I think, 30 years out. That to me seems ridiculous that they're charging 3.5% on that type of loan in this type of environment. Mm-hmm. That a lot of people will still take it because it's the only option, mm-hmm. but it's not a great option, especially mm-hmm. when there's so much uncertainty around how deep this is actually going to go. But there are certain state facilities, though, that I've come across that different clients have access to, where they're there's lending facilities that are more specialized that'll offer bridge loans for like emergency financing, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I've been having this discussion with a lot of people in my network lately, and these loans, even if they're at 0%, or if at 0% it doesn't make sense, but at like 1%, really low percentage, why would a business owner borrow against future profits to keep staff operating or keep staff just getting paid? I mean, if the demand for work is gone, why would you borrow against future profits just to have people sitting?
So there's a few reasons, and the first I think is a kind of reframing it a little bit. You shouldn't have staff. You should right size your staff yesterday. So that's something that should already be figured out. And so you should have your staff appropriately sized to the amount of work you have now and kind of what your pipeline looks like. Why you would borrow to keep staff online that aren't producing right now is because maybe in your view, the downturn is pretty steep but quick. And in 3 months, the upturn starts, and you want to be prepared to take advantage of new business in that space, because a lot of businesses are going to die on this downturn.
A lot of the politicians are framing the loans in a way in the media, and nothing's been settled so far, but they're framing it as if businesses take these low interest rate loans, then they can't lay off anyone. And so, when I hear that, I'm hearing
they're handcuffing them.
Yeah, I've got to borrow against future profits for, that I don't think anyone's considering that perspective today.
No, that's a really good point. And that's a much harder case to make. I guess the challenge is companies are between that and not existing.
Right.
Yeah, pretty cut and dry. It's binary.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of options out there right now.
Okay. And then I guess just jump back to the SBA. Those are a pain in the ass to get, right?
I think so traditionally, yes.
Okay.
I think they've relaxed some of the restrictions and process around it. I'm not an SBA lender. I don't get into that too much. Mm-hmm. We look at it from a strategy standpoint of, do the finances work out? Does the, thing make sense for your business, kind of thing?
We just applied for the Florida bridge loan, which is a bridge loan to the federal SBA. And I thought it was kind of hilarious because at the very bottom of the form, it asks you to fill out all the information for the agency that helped you fill out this form. And I was like, if you have to put that on your document, it's too complicated.
Yeah. I know there's banks that just specialize in SBAs, and I've looked at them in the past. And I mean, at one point, maybe 2 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier than that, you couldn't really get one unless you were buying a build. It was just ridiculous. It was like, this is a scenario that is never going to happen for me. I don't fit any of the specialty classes. It was just like, hey, here's a high five and a good luck, pal. It's like, all right. So
unfortunately for digital marketing and digital service firms, these loans are designed with manufacturing more in mind, or a more asset heavy class. So the collateral's not going to be there. So you're going to need to personally guarantee it anyway off of, whatever home or assets that you have. They're, like I said, they're not a great option, but for a lot of companies, they're the only option.
Okay. So let's say that everybody does get a cash injection to some extent, right?
Yep.
And to me, if there's markets that are, let's say that they're just dipping, I don't think they're necessarily going to go out of business. From what you know in finance, like, what does that do? Is that then people just holding and kind of messing around and burning cash, not going to be as profitable? Like, what does that dip look like if everybody got funded?
Do you mean, so you can look at it from, I guess, two perspectives. You can look at it from the business perspective of what happens to these restaurants and bars and, travel things. And then also what happens from an individual level, and they're obviously connected. Individually, what you want is people to get this check and then to go spend it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want them to spend it on paying down debt. You want to spend it on consumption, because you need to look at the velocity of the dollar and the velocity of the money. And that being spent at a grocery store is then spent at a supplier, is then spent at another thing, another thing, another thing. That's how the economy works. If it's spent to just pay down debt, it's taken essentially just out of the circulation.
Okay.
So from the personal perspective, if everybody gets $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is, we would want to see them spending it on things.
Like cigarettes, beer.
I'm sorry?
Like cigarettes, beer, that kind of thing?
Right. Except spending on vices seems to go down in once you get into the crisis. Like it
really?
Peaks
I always
initially.
heard the opposite.
What's up?
I always heard the opposite. This is really intriguing.
Right. So it peaks. It goes really high initially because everybody's like freaking out a little bit. But if bars are closed, Pennsylvania shut down all of their liquor stores. Like you actually cannot get to these things in certain places. So you're having this issue of even if somebody wants to go spend that $1,000, they're vastly limited on what they can go spend it on.
Okay. Now, what about agencies? Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, interesting side note. I once moved to Pennsylvania and went to a convenience store, and I was so lost because I couldn't find a beer cooler. And I asked the person at the counter, I'm like, where is your beer cooler? And they're like, what are you talking about? You have to go to a state store. That was my first experience with having to purchase alcohol at a state store. It was so culturally weird for me.
North Carolina's like that too, if I'm not mistaken, or they used to be. Yeah, and I think South Carolina had those little airline bottles that, like, if you went to like a bar or a club, like you wanted like a mixed drink with hard booze, they get these little airplane, and yeah, man, that's how it was formed.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something to do with size. So I want to jump back to that, Nick. So let's say that there's agencies, right? And all the agencies get injected with cash. Is it essentially the same thing, because they're paying down their employees who would then be paying that down?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, like thinking about it, I don't know if I've seen small businesses get injected with capital like that from the federal government. Obviously the agency owners would receive cash, and all the employees would, but I don't know of an example off the top of my head where a certain small businesses, obviously, like larger businesses, like, the automakers, they got huge bailouts. I don't know if there's been a bailout for small businesses. Ever.
Okay. And that's what I'm wondering with all these SBA programs and some of these things that are going on.
Yeah.
With this dip, companies get cash. There's going to be some that fall to the wayside. The dip comes back up, right sizes itself, however we want to say that. And then what happens? Is it just like a bloop? All right, cool. All right, we're all back to normal,
Yeah. So that's the thing is, it's kind of how we come out of this is kind of predicated on how we go into it and how deep it goes. Because if we are locked down for 2 to 3 weeks and magically there's a vaccine and everybody's okay to move around and do stuff again, you're going to see much less of an impact. If, however, things are less rosy and we're locked down for 2 to 3 months and we have to wait for therapeutics to come online before, sorry, working at home now and there's a few animals around.
No worries, man.
Makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah.
But if we have to wait longer for this thing to bottom, the challenge is going to be things that went out of business, restaurants and bars and whatnot. They're not going to just magically come back into business. They're done essentially. The people who ran them and who supplied the initial capital for them, their leases might not even be in place still. The things that they used as collateral to start the place, ovens and ranges and different assets, those might be gone if lenders needed to collect on it. So you have this kind of, how fast does it bounce back?
Mm-hmm.
And in which areas does it bounce back, and which rate for each of those areas? Because it's going to be different based on industry. And as a digital marketer, agency owner, you need to understand where your end market exposure is. So if you understand your profile of end market exposure, and you understand how different end markets are coming back and when they come back online and how quickly, then you can kind of position yourself to be at the forefront of that and take market share at that point.
Yeah. All right. So, and then by your end market, do you mean where essentially, to tell me what that looks like paint that picture.
So you as an agency owner would want to know, obviously, how, you'd want to know which spaces, which industries you have expertise in. You already know that. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to know which industries are going to be majorly affected by this and when. So some will be more of a waterfall thing. Some will be more tangentially related. Obviously, restaurants, bars, travel, all dead right now.
Yep.
But as an aside, what happens to the clothing shop that's next to the bar that used to get a lot of business from, bar patrons passing by, whatever, mm-hmm. That kind of thing. What are those tangential things that are going to go down, and do you have exposure to those? And then as stuff starts to come back online in, say, 3 to 6 months, where can you spend your time and effort on your revenue generation to
yeah, it's Garfield. Yeah.
About that monster.
What do you feed your cat?
Oh my God, he eats everything. He's a tank. You want to know where to spend your effort, basically, and that's going to change based on the stimulus, based on a million different things. And that's why I say we're still in that kind of comprehension stage right now, because we just don't know how or where these impacts are going to crop up.
Based on China, right? They're supposedly businesses are back, wet markets are back online or whatever. Everybody's, coming back. Everybody's going back to work. I didn't mean to throw that and put that in your headspace, but so supposedly they've tapered down. They're beginning to come back online, and that puts us from December to now, which is 3.5 months or something that they've been dealing with this. If we were to look at that timeline, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, a 3.5 month timeline.
Yeah. Man, this is so I don't think that that's as appropriate for this.
Okay, perfect.
Comparing to the US. Mm-hmm. And the reasoning behind that is we received essentially our first cases at the same time South Korea did. Mm-hmm. I think it was the same day. New York Times just had an article on this, I think, today. And in that time span, our testing and our response as a country has been such utter trash that we're not going to be on the same trajectory as South Korea or as China. Mm-hmm. China shut down 70 million civilians within weeks. Mm-hmm. It was a quick shutdown. Where basically people were locked in their homes. Mm-hmm. We don't have anything close to that. We have kids on Miami beaches partying. You have completely different responses to this thing. So the challenge is this trajectory of, yes, stuff could have come back online faster, but right now it seems like the strategy is we need to quarantine pretty much everything. We need to then test massively to make sure we know where the hell stuff is, quarantine the cases that are infected, and then we can start letting people out. And to do that on a national level in the US, it seems like a stretch, to say the least. So it would be 3 months of downturn would be the best case scenario that we see for the US. We're expecting multiple quarters of revenue impact, and it's more than likely not a really significant second half rebound. It's maybe fourth quarter we can get back to some kind of growth.
So based on that, like logic, right? Like lockdown versus us, should we not half-ass this then?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Should we not half-ass it? Sounds like the U.S. is half-assing it based on, not doing a, official lockdown, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the only way to contain this, right? I mean, it spreads so fast and so easily that I mean, in the absence of therapeutics, vaccines, some kind of antiviral, there's not much we can do for it. And vaccine production, to get it into like Joe Schmo's hand, is 18 months away. I mean, that's in the meantime, I don't know of another way. And obviously I'm not an expert in that space, but I haven't read of another way to effectively combat that, sorry, go on.
No, my fear is that we are wrecking the economy. For the damage that is going to happen to the economy is going to be just as bad as if we just let the virus go through the population. I mean, people suffer dramatically during dramatic downswings in a long extended recession. And I just feel like when we're talking about, everything that we're doing and the plans that are going on and shutting down bars and restaurants and gyms and all this stuff, is anyone calculating the long-term economic impact? Because we know we can't just print money and give money to everyone just to keep everyone going. Then money's worthless at that point. And how many people are going to suffer because we're kind of purposely trashing the economy? And that's seems really scary to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's that rock in the hard place again. I mean, it's a question of, can we deal with unemployment in high or in low double digits for a period of time, or if the mortality rates are accurate, can we lose 10 million people just in the U.S.? I mean, that's kind of your calculus, and it seems like the right play is to do a fast and complete quarantine with massively expanded testing. So then you can remove the quarantine as fast as possible. And then as soon as that quarantine's up, you can get back to, business as usual almost, while still being vigilant about new cases.
Famous investor Bill Ackman, I think is pronounced.
Bill Ackman.
That's he's advocating for that plan right now, is everyone take a 30-day, pause, no rent, no mortgages, no leases, no everything. But I have a hard time understanding how you trace that all the way up through the economy, because if I'm not paying rent, then that means the landlord doesn't get paid, which means I guess the bank doesn't get paid. I mean, there's a lot of steps in between that. And then what about home repairs and AC?
Everybody has to have 30 days cash is what that tells me.
Right. But I mean, what about if the AC unit breaks in a rental home and, we have laws that says you have to, replace that because it's an essential piece of equipment. Well, you're not getting
They have
rent.
to go and live with you.
Huh?
Your renters have to go and live with you as a landlord.
Excellent.
No, it's social distancing. They can't come anywhere near you.
Oh, that's right. No, you bring up a great point, Dave. What do we do? What do we do in this situation?
You can't do that. That's not my plan. If I had the $1 trillion budget that we're talking about, is I would create these walk-through disinfectant machines, almost like going through an airport security center, and set them up throughout the cities. And before you go in and out of a building, you have to walk through this disinfectant thing. And yeah, you're not going to stop somebody that is actively infected from passing it on. But if you are picking something up at random in public, then that should kill it before you touch your face, or let's make getting healthy easy rather than destroying the economy and destroying the best economy in the world.
I think to that point, I just think of me walking through with a nice jacket on or something, being like, damn it, I forgot.
With just a nice jacket over world health.
I don't, but I mean, at the end of the day, right? I mean, I think that's what testing will do. If we know who has it and we can speed that up, it's 4 days, has to get shipped to California, right? if that process is sped up, we understand like, okay, here's a hot spot, here's a pocket, and we can just quarantine in tighter quadrants or cohorts, if you will. I think that's the problem that needs to be solved quicker.
Right. And there's rapid tests available. I mean, the testing ability and the time to get a positive has dramatically reduced from, in other countries at least, from days to hours in some places.
This isn't the hold your breath for 10 seconds, is it?
Yeah.
You guys hear that? That BS. It was a self-home test. Yeah, hold your breath for 10 seconds. If you're able to do it for 10 or more, you don't have it. Somebody told me that. I looked it up like 10 seconds later. I was like, wow, this is literally the dumbest idea I've heard. Like
this is why science is important. Science education needs to be at the forefront of everything.
What were you saying, Dave?
Well, one of the things that I don't think we're, as a society, calculating either is that the fundamental valuation of business going forward has changed. I think there's going to be long-term effects in outsourcing, because now I think a country's health service system has to play a fact in the valuation of whether you can ship a bunch of work to a nearly third world, society. But in addition, would you start a 50-unit franchise restaurant business now when you know at once a decade we're going to get a virus that's the government's going to force a shutdown? Like, we have these giant restaurant chains that investors and capital has never had to worry about a government shutdown of restaurants. I don't think that's ever happened. And now investors and capital have to think, do I want to invest in a business that will get shut down because of a virus? So the valuation of everything has changed going forward.
Yeah, I don't want to answer for Nick, but I just think people are so short-sighted. Hence why nobody has cash now. And in 2008, we had a crisis where everybody should have held on to their cash. So, and I don't know. I think people are short-sighted, and I think there will be long-term impacts. I think somebody might question it. There will be a percentage drop-off. But man, when the market's good and everybody's got a good idea, like, it's incredible what people will move forward with. But yeah, government intervention. I think this virus, there's going to be insurance laws and policies that are going to change. But I look at the opportunity side, not to shift too far, but I think that the biggest thing is going to be less people leasing office space. The number of people that are breaking leases right now, like, is going to be unbelievable. We were on a call yesterday where people were literally saying, with $14,000 a month rent, where they're like, yeah, I'm not paying you. I called up my landlord and I'm not paying you. It's like, whoa, like, literally, all right, that's a paycheck somebody's literally not going to get this month. And who knows how far that's going to, follow down the line. And Are people then going to, evict? I think those are going to be some of the biggest changes that come out of this. And granted, of course, the fallout of people just, businesses going under because they didn't have the money.
Are these office centers going to become the next mall?
I own a co-working space. It's
That's
not
right.
great.
I forgot. Yeah, not to punch too tenuously. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's not a great time for the co-working world. I think SoftBank was supposed to put another $3 billion into WeWork, and I saw a report yesterday that they're rethinking that whole investment. Yeah. So I think commercial real estate is going to take a hit pretty significantly. Yeah. Also because there's this work at home idea, this remote work idea. This has been something that companies have been messing with for 15 years now, 20 years now. Mm-hmm. Like, it's something that should have caught on a long time ago. And now it seems like companies are kind of forced to experiment with this, whether they want to or not. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're going to see productivity, obviously a drop initially, but you can be pretty productive in a home office.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother-in-law is a pretty high manager in Liberty Mutual. Mm-hmm. They have a giant call center outside of Orlando that he works at, and they have sent everyone home. There's only 2 people that are reporting to the office now, and hundreds of people working from home now. And the whole call center system is, operated through a computer system, and they can log in. And I was just thinking through that, and I thought, okay, that works. It's a good business model, and they could maintain that save a lot of money on their commercial office space. But it'll be funny when you call in with an insurance question and you hear kids screaming in the background. I mean, those kind of jobs at home are going to have really different environments. And I think that's kind of what the hesitation of mass, work at home adoption's been is, are you going to be okay with, kids screaming in the background when you're trying to get an update on your insurance claim?
Like a kid jumping on a table.
Yeah, right. I think it's one of those things where the companies who have, and digital marketing is one of them that's been at the forefront of this. The ones that figured it out, they've got it down. I mean, we've got a client that's selling, 7-figure enterprise deals where their entire team is distributed and remote. Like, sure. People, when you show them you can deliver, it doesn't matter where you're delivering sure. from.
My biggest concern, I think, with the trend is I think we'll see more, because to me, in my experience, the most productive members that are work home is a more mature workforce that has years of experience under their belt. The entry-level position working at home, I think, is going to suffer. I think it's going to be harder to break into the industry because, I'm just envisioning, a brand new grad. He has 4 roommates that are working in a bar or working night jobs, that haven't entered their professional job yet, and you're trying to work at home. I think there's going to be just a snapback of, it's going to be even harder for these people to find jobs if we go full remote.
Well, I mean, part of that's a management issue. So if you can't manage new employees because you don't have metrics in place, you don't have processes in place, that's an internal company thing. New grads that want to get a job, I mean, they're coming, like if you graduated in the last year, you're stepping into a very challenging economic position. And if you want to get and maintain a job, you're going to do it. You're maybe not going to work with or live with 3 other people who are going to the bars every night. It's really lifestyle choices, and a lot of it is management at the individual company level.
I think also training, though, because observation, right? So if you're lucky enough early in your career to surround yourself with like really hardworking people, you go into an office, you see how they grind, they plug, and they just go at it. I think that's a really important element, from a reflection standpoint, and saying like, oh yeah, I saw him just crush it, the person that you look up to. And I guess that's the concern here. You bring in young people in the workforce. Yeah. And we don't know, right? Because maybe all of us. What's that?
Where's the mentorship?
Yeah, like we were all around this, different thing. So, and maybe that's just a concern that older people always have of a younger generation, I mean,
well, I guess I wonder why that breaks down over the internet. If I see somebody doing Slack updates and that little light's green at 9 p.m. or get an inbox of a report or something. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, man. What's your cat's name, by the way? We should get him a Zoom channel.
This is Buddy. He's a monster of an animal.
Yeah. Hey, Buddy.
But I guess the mentorship and the productivity and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's multiple companies that have done this very successfully, that have been fully distributed for years. I mean, look at like the best example is Basecamp. I mean, they've absolutely crushed everything they've done. So it's almost like, yes, we can come and sit here and think of challenges because there's going to be a million of them. But this is stuff that's largely been solved.
I agree. And I guess we have a lot of junior talent. We bring them on, right? I don't think Basecamp does. It's very difficult to get a job there from what I understand, right? Gotcha. And I'm not trying to like just throw you into that corner, of that. I believe they still have an office in Chicago, which I agree with. But I think it's, how do we nurture that younger crowd? And maybe that's it. It's metrics, it's training, it's video, collaboration software.
I mean, it's co-work sessions. You can set up a Zoom call and work just alongside somebody else and not have an actual meeting, just have it up. There's been a lot of people that have started doing that, just for quick jump-in questions. And you can do that with, you can pair them with a mentor. Like that's not challenging to do.
Yeah. And I think that spurs. Yeah. You know what? I should probably, with one of our next guests, I should probably bring somebody on that's, has that agency that's, fully, quote unquote, distributed or remote,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and just drill them. Just grind them into.
Well, I was gonna say I got an intro for you, but I don't know if
I kid. I'd love the intro. No, that's not my personality at all. But I guess the other thing too is I guess I'm old school in that, and I'm a very social person. So like I love going into the office and being like, "Hey,
Yes.
how you doing?"
Yes.
So
I definitely
maybe I
miss
just
that. Like,
Yeah.
just being at home for 4 days right now is like, I get why we spent the money on the office. Like, it's really nice to have. But that's personality types, and figuring out
Yeah.
ways to I guess still have camaraderie is important. And it might not be a situation. I mean, there's companies that will have, a co-working membership where they'll go in once a week or something like that, just to have everybody in the same place.
Right.
And then, the other 4 days of the week, they go do their own thing. So there's different ways to work on that.
Maybe we'll see a trend away from the traditional office, complex, and more of the individual, smaller, I don't know what you would call it, but like the office we're in is not in a, large sprawling business center. The office that John's in is, off on its own. I like those because I think they're more character and it's just a more unique space. I hate the having a keypad
office park, like a commercial office park.
Correct. Yeah, I would never have my office there, and which is why I'm in my office right now. Even though I've been self-quarantining for the podcast and for meetings, I come into the office to do that because I don't like doing professional video things from my house. So it's convenient though, but I'm not driving all the way to downtown into some large business center.
And I think along those lines is WeWork going to change your name to Less Work? No?
Sure. I think so.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. No, but I agree. I think this is going to I think this is going to change, and I think there's going to be so many companies that are just fully distributed after this. Like, it's going to be ridiculous.
100%.
All right. I know we're coming up toward the end of the show. Talked about a myriad of things. I do want to get into some of my staples here. So I guess to kind of sum this up though, before we do that, what would you recommend all agencies do right now, Nick?
Okay. So we're in that first part of this, the first phase of this issue, and you need to kind of bunker down.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that, first of all, management's on the same page. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing you need to do, is make sure that you all collectively understand the severity of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And chat through how much of that you want to communicate with your team. I lean towards more full transparency, but there may be one or two things like the financial position of the company. You want to communicate how stable you are so they understand where they kind of are in the world. You don't want a panic team, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, get everybody on the same page. Number two, go remote as of like yesterday. If you're still all coming into an office, that is an intense liability. If one person brings COVID-19 into your office and takes out 40% of your workforce to 70% of your workforce for 2 weeks, like that's an issue. These aren't things that you recover from in 2 days. It's a long recovery process. So just from a risk mitigation standpoint, go remote.
Mm-hmm.
Number three is making sure that you've shored up your cash reserves. Obviously, like if you're in that 1 to 3 month kind of area,
Mm-hmm.
you need to bump that up significantly. You want to be able to have expenses covered so that when opportunities present themselves, you can take advantage of them. That's the biggest thing. Examine your headcount and make a plan to trigger cuts. So you want to know, based on your forward-looking pipeline, when and what cuts you're going to need to make. It's easy. It's a terrible thing to have to do, and it's a process that nobody enjoys, but having a plan that you can just refer back to when that happens takes some of the emotion out of it, and it helps you make better decisions.
Do you have anything else to that? Because I had a question.
I guess the second piece of that is in that plan, have an idea of the core team that you would need to rebuild the firm. So if outlooks get even worse than what we're expecting, and we're in, significant unemployment territory and the economy grinds to a halt, you need to know what's the baseline level of talent you need.
Got it. Worst case scenario. All right. And I guess you said best case scenario, 3.5 months, right?
That's what we're thinking. 3.5 months.
And then
is best case.
Worst case scenario?
Forever.
Worst case.
Oh,
Jesus. Things are shut down extensively for a while until the vaccine's ready.
And that could be
12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months. Wow. Literally the destruction of our economy. That would create
we're basically all getting, bread handouts at that point.
Okay. If you had to bet, let's say we could do a bet on the show for $50.
Which may only be worth 20 by the time the bet is due.
Very true.
How about we bet in gold instead of dollars?
Bitcoins.
Man.
Yeah, that's safe.
I think with therapeutics coming online, and if we get our collective ass in gear and get social distancing working and quarantine working and testing working, we can probably start to come out of this in the 4 to 8 month kind of time frame.
Okay.
That's when the economy recovers. That's, maybe we're quarantined for a month or 2 or 3, but the economy starts to recover around month, 7 or 8.
Just in time for Halloween, where we go door to door to strangers' houses.
Right. Get some Corona candy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to go ahead and give you this space. Is there anything that you would like to peddle or promote? Feel free.
I guess not for me personally, but take the quarantine stuff seriously. This is a situation this has the potential to be a once in a century type event. It's better to be prepared and to act decisively now.
Is that my internet or is that yours? Oh, Did I lose you?
Not me.
Oh, dude, it totally got like.
No. Is it still bad?
No, you're good.
No, it's good now. But literally at the crescendo. Yeah. So. You want to repeat that again? I'll see. I tell everybody I'll edit it, but I usually don't. But go ahead and repeat it.
Well, damn it, I forgot what I was saying. I guess the important thing is take quarantine seriously and understand that it's not us toughing it out and us being, burly and immune to this virus. It's I'm protecting the old people out there that I like. It's I'm doing something and you're doing something that helps protect the emergency room guy, the doctor, the nurse that has to deal with an overload of cases. It's not just for our safety, it's for everybody's.
Got it. All right. I think that's a good closing message. All right. And Promethean Research, what do you do and how can you help agencies? I want to close there. So I can help you plug something.
So we help with strategy. We help with research. We do strategic consulting. So we kind of help you answer those tough questions. We're really good at finding paths to growth. So we work with you to kind of figure out you're here now, you want to be here in 3 years. What are the paths that get you there the most efficiently? And then as far as, what we can do for this specific situation, a lot of it's workshopping stuff and forecasting stuff with leadership.
Okay. Awesome. I appreciate it. And how can everybody get a hold of you?
PrometheanResearch.com is probably the easiest, or probably give out my email.
Okay.
Toss it in there.
Bingo, bango.
Yeah.
You got it. Nick, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was great talking to you.
Likewise. All right, Dave, how do you think that went?
I enjoyed the conversation. I mean, it's a topic that everyone's worried about, everyone's talking about right now. And it's important to be prepared. And I just I don't know if I'm as pessimistic on the scenario, and I think I'm a little bit more on the realist side of it, and I just think that there's going to be a little bit more cut and dry actions from people than what he was painting. But overall, I mean, this is what everyone's talking about. This is an important conversation to have.
I agree. Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of great points of like what's going on in some of the circumstances. It was a lot more like he's like a little bit doomier and gloomier than I thought. I was like, oh, 3.5 months, and and maybe this is me being Pollyanna, but I'm hoping it's a smaller blip. I'm hoping we can get past this. Granted, hope is never a strategy, but I'm gonna continue to hold my head up high. And I think some of my walkaways or takeaways from that conversation is there are going to be a significant number of people that are negatively impacted and they're not going to be able to make it. And I guess now just reflecting, just from a mindset standpoint, I understand people they don't take action, but I also believe there's people that are going to take wrong actions, others that are not going to take actions, and that's going to actually pull a lot of people out of the market. So there's going to be a lot of people looking for jobs.
100%. One of the things in some of my friend circles that I've been discussing this with, I can instantly sense when I'm talking to someone that only thinks about their lane. Mm-hmm. So I have this friend that and I felt I was hearing a little bit of that when we were talking about the work from home and like my concerns over entry level people, because I've got friends that they're like, oh, everyone's going digital, everyone's going remote. I'm like, that works for some people. Mm-hmm. That works for a mature workforce. It does mm-hmm. not work for everyone. Mm-hmm. And, with our guest right there trying to tell me that it's going to work for everyone, I don't agree.
Well, I mean, on his side, though, I think he said that he has experience with people that you or I may not, right? So based on that, I think, and granted, I hope that's, potentially, I have a couple other guests in mind that I know have fully distributed agencies that we should talk to.
No, but those are 1%. That's the very small sample size. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about right now is applying this to the nation. This is right.
Like construction work from home. Like you still have to go to the job site. Yeah, right. I agree.
This is like NAFTA when we decided to send all our manufacturing, and then all of a sudden we had millions of people that were only qualified to do manufacturing work sitting around doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Nobody's thinking of the unintended consequences.
Because the janitors that clean up the commercial offices, the cleaning company.
They promised
thinking about our cleaning company.
They promised people in the early 90s that they were going to get retrained and get white collar jobs. That didn't happen because not everyone's capable of a white collar job.
Not everybody wants one.
Right. We need jobs of all things. And so when I hear somebody say, yeah, everybody's going to, there's a ton of people that aren't working from home right now because they can't. I was listening to Bill Ackman yesterday, and it got me so heated because he's like, everybody just needs to stay home and order Chipotle. And I'm like, who the fuck is how can you be okay and say that? And you're putting him as a different class citizen then. The Chipotle people still have to go work to make sure that you get your Chipotle in the afternoon. But
not everybody can afford Chipotle either.
Right. Well, I mean, but it's the point of like how he so easily discredited the people that still have to go to work to make that small fraction of people at work at home a reality.
I think if anybody's listening to a billionaire on this topic right now, they are so far removed with what they can. Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. And not to get political, but I think that's at any time why it's difficult to even take advice from a president, right? Because they're so far removed based on, all the other services that they have. But anyway, that's as political.
Yeah, that's a little tangent.
Yeah, a little tangent. But I think in this, I think there's a potentiality based on our economy getting destroyed here, right? Whether you and I and everybody else has a different viewpoint, we don't know right from wrong. And the one thing in there, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, and this is something I've actually looked into the past, based on a recession, the death rate goes up substantially, right? Because there's more people under stress. There's people working harder. Some people
Suicides go
don't
up.
have jobs. Yeah, like it's right. And at that point, yeah, we have that scale. Like, what's worse than what's than the other? We're also, and guys getting a little bit political again. We're in a political climate right now where it behooves both sides to not do what is appropriate for the situation, rather than making the other one look bad potentially. Right?
Right.
I don't know.
100%.
So I think at the end of the day, though, no matter what happens, we're in a space, technology, marketing, in that space that it's going to take a hit, but it's not going anywhere. This is still going to exist.
Small businesses hire the working population of America. More than 50% work for small business. Now, small business is 500 or less employees, which is a big range. I mean, when I learned that, I was like, well, that's kind of large. I mean,
that's actually some small businesses people consider under $1 billion. So
that's
really
ridiculous.
Depends.
I would call that a large business.
Right. But yeah, like there's like $500 million companies that it's considered a small business because it's under that threshold.
500 employees. Yeah. So the strength of our economy is under attack right now, and we're doing it electively. And I just have such a problem with that. And I understand that COVID-19 is scary and people can die, but that's a maybe risk. And destroying the economy is a known risk where we know what's going to happen to people. And we're taking that over an unknown.
But this is a mass hysteria that's going on. So there's what good decision is ever made in a mass hysteria where literally, if you're not quote unquote self-quarantining people there, for instance, there was a pool party that one of the employees was telling me about, and there's like a Facebook group where people are like, hey, let's go have a pool party on the top deck, up there. And granted, these are all people that are 40 and younger, but there's a few old people that live in this apartment complex that started getting in there saying obscenities like, you're killing people. Like, they're vicious about it. Granted, based on what we know, that they're going to be, more affected. Right. So this is a super emotionally charged conversation in it, but I don't necessarily agree that, like you're saying, that we should destroy our economy. I think there's going to have to be sacrifices that are made where we continually keep the wheels moving. And I don't know where that line is, but for instance, I was in a gym last night. I know. I went to a gym last night.
How dare you?
I know. And I don't think of myself as a murderer or anything. But I go to a gym last night. But here's the irony of that situation. The guy next to me was a nurse. And he was so sweaty. Right? This nurse sweat all over. Yeah. And I asked him how was. He said, yeah, there's issues that he's seeing at the hospital for sure. There's people that, quote unquote, are having breathing problems. He said, but what he's mainly seeing is everybody is so scared. Anything that's going wrong right now, they are rushing to the hospital, which is a really bad decision, in my opinion. So it's automatically at a max capacity based on the hysteria. So when something is so panic driven, how can you really understand what is going on? And that's the situation that I believe we're in right now.
Right. Yeah. When there's a natural disaster around the world, especially when it's not in the U.S., if you think back to like the tsunami that killed a bunch of people in I think it was India.
No, the tsunami, that was in Japan.
Indonesia.
Oh, the one in Indonesia. Yeah, there was another one in Japan with there's the earthquake.
That was Fukushima. And then you have the earthquake in Haiti. I mean, the number one country that donates money to those recovery efforts is who? United States of America. Every single time.
Canada.
Why? Because our economy is so fucking strong that we have the money to help the world. Our economy is a positive generator for this world. And I feel like we are handicapping it. We are destroying it. And the rest of the world is kind of encouraging it because they don't I think this is the dumbest decision we can make. I really do. I do not think you should.
So no self-quarantining? You think we should just roll with it, let everybody potentially get it?
No, I think we should have been implementing steps to prevent, like I said, disinfectant systems. Like if you walk into a bar, they should have, wipes and
it's in the air though, right? Somebody coughs. That's the issue. So I think that's where I went back to testing. So you can disinfect all day long, but soon as Sally, coughs on me, then
sure,
I'm screwed. So
Yep.
that's where I think where everybody needs to put
be
their
responsible.
focus.
If they're sick, stay home. If they're out in the public being sick, then that almost should be a punishable offense.
But to some degree, but what I'm saying is we're asking people to now be responsible in that milieu when right now nobody's being responsible based on the way that in this current situation.
Well, there are plenty of people being responsible. There is some that are not. I mean, the big challenge here, really,
no one, but granted that was a bit of an overkill.
The big challenge here is that we have the 14-day incubation, and that's the scary part. Is that the people that are walking around are showing no signs and could be passing it, and nobody knows the wiser.
Right.
So I understand that, but I still, I'm very nervous of, all these families that are servers. There's tons of people that rely on serving other people food on a nightly basis. Their jobs have been wiped out. $1,000 check is not going to fix that.
Yeah, right where I'm at in St. Petersburg, most of the economy are, and I'm not.
That's the country.
Yeah, and I mean most people that I know, and I'm this might be a large generality that work in the service industry are not the best not the best at saving their cash, right?
Good.
My mom worked in the restaurant industry. Granted, my wife,
they live paycheck. They live night to night.
She worked in the restaurant industry. So yeah, seeing this, and I'm like, really, like, oh, this is tragic. I have friends that still own restaurants. I almost opened a restaurant. Thank God that I didn't.
Yeah, our administrative assistant, I pulled her from a waitress job, and because multitasker, it's a great transitionary role. Well, she would work all day, make some tips, and then go right to a bar and pay for overpriced drinks and put that tip money right back into the service industry. And I just always thought, how do you get ahead by that math?
And over tip, like they'll tip like 60%. Right. I'm like, wow. Like,
yeah.
Oh, they got a job. I understand. I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah. They're going to hit that. It's going to hit this class of workers hard. And it's going to be bad. Like I advised a couple people I know that own a restaurant, all those waiters that you thought about maybe letting go, turn them into delivery drivers today. Because if these restaurants that they're all thinking, oh, we'll do delivery dudes or we'll do Uber Eats, and those systems are about to be overwhelmed.
Well, that's 30% gone right there.
Yeah.
And sometimes 50% depending on the service. I think that's, I agree with your.
Do they even have enough drivers to handle the load? Because right now,
Uber, everybody's not traveling. So if those people, shifted over to the eat side of things, I think potentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All the Uber drivers, if they switched up, but I still felt like there in the coming weeks, as this gets serious and intensifies, there's going to be a serious demand on the food delivery services, and the restaurants that have their own delivery are going to succeed and survive, where the ones that are relying on delivery dudes are going to fail.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of restaurants are going to fail anyway, because the ordering alone, people that go for the experience, they don't go for the food. Now they're just going for the food.
And the American psyche has changed. This will be impacted for years.
Yeah. Good time to buy stock in grocery stores or Zoom.
Yeah. The Blue Apron went up. I think I read somewhere that it's gone up 100%.
And they're still only valued at 250 based on where they were a few years ago at 1.7 billion.
Yeah, their IPO is.
Yeah, I know. It gets so. I mean, it was so crazy that the number of commercials I would hear on podcasts for them was like, wow, man, they got some serious ad dollars.
Right. Yeah, all their money was raised at. Now, so one of the things that I've done recently that was not Corona based, but turns out to be Corona aced.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, I coined that.
Is I signed up for, it's called Porch Pickings, and it's a company that
horrible name.
It's something better than that. I don't know.
Okay,
but Front Porch Pickings, yeah, I mean,
not that much better. So they basically aggregate a bunch of produce from farms around the area, and then every other week drop off a bag of fresh fruits and vegetables right to my doorstep. Mm-hmm. It is a phenomenal value without coronavirus, and now throw coronavirus on top of it, and it's
even better. Like I highly recommend things like that. And you're
Yeah, I do
local
too. I love that idea, and it's supporting your local community, which I think is strong. Yeah, I've been going out to restaurants and having dinner before I get quarantined, and yeah, it might be some type of risk, but I'm supporting them, and granted, I'm over tipping like substantially, like 200%, because I know that like, all right, this is not working well for this person or this restaurant locally. It's a really sad state of affairs, and I don't like the way that it was handled. Granted, I'm not on the medical side. I may just be speaking with the arrogance or bravado. I have a good immune system and not really necessarily affected by this, but I don't like the way that this is going at all. And I'm just going to still just stay optimistic and do everything that I can to support all those around me and support all of these other agency owners. I think everybody just needs to really not get scarce and help out their fellow brothers and sisters as much as they can in this type of scenario. And don't panic. Don't
right.
Don't take all the NyQuil when you're at Publix. I spoke with a lady the other day, not going to say who, she's actually a friend, and she said all these people are screaming at me. She lives out in California. I was like, why? And I could hear her on the phone. And she said, well, they're saying I'm hoarding all the medicine. I was like, well, what'd you do? She's like, well, I have a cart full of medicine. I was like, you are hoarding all the medicine. They have the right to scream at you. So on that note, anything else you'd like to say before we close up this topic, my friend?
No, I think we probably need to do it again. I think we need to get this episode out as fast as possible, get it to the people. I think it'll be of value. And I think we should really make sure that we have our next guest is, Corona featured. And I think this is going to be a topic we're going to be talking about a lot in 2020.
I'm just concerned everybody's going to get sick of hearing about it because I go through my news feed and I'm like, I don't even want to hear about Corona anymore. There's like one thing I check on the Washington Post and it's just the numbers of where they go up and the deaths. And that's essentially all I really, want to hear. Granted, I'm absorbing a lot of it, organically.
Sure.
But all right, cool. Let's go ahead and sign off. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.